Hi, Grace. You're going to talk about this book?
Yes. Can you see it?
I can.
Okay. It's called Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawasaki. Might be saying that wrong. Could be
Mieko.
Mieko. And I want to talk about it because I read it last month and I haven't yet talked about it. And specifically, I don't know if any viewers out there are familiar with the Indie Press Project, but Stephanie and a few other people do this thing where they read a book by a small press like every month, I guess. Like they can choose like a different one and then they all post about it to sort of highlight independent publishing. And I meant to do it for this book and I didn't because, lots of things happen. But anyway, this book was published in a new English translation by Europa earlier this year, and it's translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. So anyway, I wanted to talk about it because I think it's a great book. Although it was originally written like more than 10 years ago. I think it was first published in Japan in like 2008. It's only available to English readers now. So yeah. What to say about this book? Abby, what do you want to know about it?
What is it about?
Oh, good cue. I feel like I'm doing a book report.
What are the themes? JK.
In a nutshell, the theme is feminism.
You mean an eggshell?
In an eggshell. The theme is feminism. So the book is split into two smaller books, actually. Well, like...
What?
Just like a first part and a second part, but they're titled book 1 and book 2.
They're not titled breasts.
Well,
and then eggs.
The front, actually, sort of. Thematically, yes.
Okay.
Like the first half, book 1, is about breasts, and the second half is about eggs, in a way. So I should stop having and hawing. But anyway, so the book follows 3 women who are all related to each other, primarily. So there's 2 sisters, and one of the sisters has a daughter who's like a teenager. And in the beginning of the book, the sister and the daughter who live in Osaka come to Tokyo to visit the other sister, who's the daughter's aunt. And they are there because the mom wants to explore breast enhancement surgery. And, just have like a quick vacation to sort of do some pre-op, like clinical research basically, and like meet with the doctors, figure out what is involved, determine if she can afford it, like that sort of thing. And her sister has been living in Tokyo for several years, even though they grew up in Osaka, sort of, or in and around Osaka. And the daughter, maybe in her teens, I guess, she's sort of kind of quieter, but kind of a typical kind of like moody teenager. And the daughter and the aunt sort of spend some time together while the mom is busy at her appointments, basically. So that's kind of like the first part, like sort of the setup. Mm-hmm. And then the second book is about 10 years later, after, the daughter and the mom have sort of gone back to their lives, and the aunt, the other sister, her name is Natsuko, has continued to live in Tokyo. She makes her living as a writer, and in the second book, she's in her 30s and kind of like contemplating like her potentially declining fertility because she's in her 30s and still unmarried and like single, like doesn't have a partner. Right. So that's where
hard relate
the breasts and the eggs, so to speak. And so the second half is really just her kind of going through her life and sort of like thinking about this, and she begins to research options about having a child on her own, like without, having a partner, and just sort of like what that would entail and what that would mean. So yeah, that's the basic of the plot. And then, so thematically, it really is about feminism because it is about each of these women in their own way, figuring out life on their own terms in a way that is sometimes running contrary to what, like, traditional patriarchal society might want. And in particular, Natsuko is forced to confront the sort of ethical and social dilemmas of having of being artificially inseminated.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know, like, how, you know, what path she'll end up taking and how, because, and I can't quite remember because it's been a while, but there were some like unique restrictions on, particular to IVF, I guess, in Japan. That is maybe different from in the United States. So
interesting. So like interesting to contemplate the question of fertility in the nation of Japan as well as the individual.
I'm trying to recall, I don't think the book really touched on Japan's declining birth rate and that larger construct, but it did sort of talk about what it might, like, it imagines what it might be like for a child or children who have come into this world this way and how they might feel in terms of loss. And so as like somebody who was not born that way but was adopted, it made me really think about these things that I think I don't normally think about because I'm not contemplating, you know, having a child, although those same things would be true for me in many ways, like what does it mean to like not know your parents or like where you came from, and how does that cause you to relate differently in a society where, you know, heritage and family tradition like and bloodlines like mean so much.
So trying to think of like other books that really emphasize this much on medical interventions and female autonomy, and not a lot coming to mind. Really.
I mean, I think that's one reason why I found this book so unique, and like it is a novel, so I mean it is very readable, and it's like primarily about that, but it's also, I guess, another theme, although I would say this is encompassed in feminism, is this idea of class, right? And so one of the things about these two sisters and like their family as a whole is they grew up poor, and like they're still poor, and so how that sort of governs the options and choices that are available to them, like the sister in the beginning wanting breast enhancement surgery because she makes her living as a hostess, like at a bar, and she's hoping that something like this will like improve her fortunes. Or I don't know, there's a lot about poverty and how they grew up that sort of impacts how they relate to each other, and, you know, why is it that Natsuko is like virtually alone at this point in her life. So
What do you want to talk a little bit about the voice or the style of writing? Obviously it's translated,
I mean, it's in translation,
so
it's like kind of hard to tell. I do think I will say that Sean, my new friend, did point out an interview to me that between Mieko Kawakami and Haruki Murakami, where she is interviewing him about his work, and they talk a lot about the writing and sort of the authorial choices that he's made in his books. And so I think what I got from that and could apply to my reading of this book is that she is a very nuanced writer, and she's like thinking a lot about like how to construct a story. And I'll say that I didn't find the writing to be overly complex or like overly simple. It's just sort of it's very readable in translation. I will say I think she originally published this as a novella, and then I think expanded it for like a full-blown book, and I don't know if it was like a novella at the end of book one, which would like page count wise kind of track. And if so, one thing that I don't know if this was quite wrapped up or resolved in a way that maybe I just like didn't quite get, but the breast storyline kind of takes second, what's the word?
Fiddle.
I was gonna say fiddle, but I was like, I don't think that's right.
I don't know that that's
it's just
plays
sort of like
fiddle.
kind of disappears. Like you do see the sister and the daughter, like, you know, obviously as when Natsuko's about 10 years older, and sort of like what's happened to them and all that. But I can't actually remember if she went through with it or not. Like if that's sort of talked about, or if it's sort of like, oh, this was an idea she had, and that caused them to come together after many years apart. But it's sort of like, in my recollection, I don't think she actually did get the surgery, either because she couldn't afford it or because life intervened in other ways. And so like the egg storyline like really takes off, and like does like you find out what happens to her in the end as she's sort of weighing these choices. So I guess that aspect of like the history of the writing of the book, I think, is maybe worth noting. But it in no way like impinged on like my enjoyment of it, I would say.
So if you had to pick like one word that you associate with this book that is not feminism, what is the first word?
Ooh.
The one word. I don't know, maybe not the first one.
That was so hard. In my head I had womanly. And
ooh.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It's like there are men in the story. Like, they talk about their father, and there's like, people she encountered, like doctors and things like that. But you don't really ever you're not viewing the story from their point of view. So that's what I mean. It's really like women-centered. Yes.
Nice.
Which is why, feminism would be the prominent thing. So,
wonderful.
But I don't know. I'm sure like there are other readings of it, but that was just, my experience. So.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway,
Great
I
novel.
hope that more people read it. I think it's actually, it might not be out in the United States yet. Like, so Europa is like, small press, but I think Picador is publishing it like later this year. So, I mean, you should be able to get it. I clearly got it, but you might have to wait, especially if you want like a paperback or something. But don't sleep on this book.
Don't. Neighborhood is giving it fireworks as their review.
It's a celebratory part of the day.
All right. Thanks, Grace. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.